Hi, I'm Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese, and welcome to our town hall today. As usual, we're conducting this town hall live from 3 to 4 p.m. today, and we've been doing that for several weeks now. First prompted by the pandemic, and of course now we have even more to talk about and even more to try to prepare people for in terms of wildfire protection and currently the wildfire relief efforts, and we're going to be talking a lot about that today. So if you've been here before, you kind of know the format. I'm going to speak for a few minutes and just recap what's happened numerically over the past week, and I'm going to introduce our special guest today who's here from the Red Cross, and then we're going to take questions which can be texted in, they can be phoned in, and I'm not sure how else. I think on the live stream you can actually post your questions, and Tara is here along with Janice Rombeck and Tebu Nguyen. They're all distant, so you won't see them in the picture. Even our two speakers today will be 6 feet apart. We're very happy and lucky to have had the contribution of this studio equipment just for this sole purpose to the county office, District 3, my supervisorial office, by the Viet 210 Charities, and they run an over-the-air station, and they offered us at the beginning of the pandemic the opportunity to speak to people because they too have been doing relief work and getting masks out and getting PPEs in general out to folks, among many other things that they've been doing. So what a great public service that they allow us to do this. So I'm just going to highlight a couple things so we can kind of get right to the conversation here. On the COVID side of things, I always take a moment to reflect on the mortality that we have been experiencing, especially since we do this week by week. It's also kind of an indicator as to how things are going, to say the least. Obviously, we would love to be living in a world, pandemic or not, where we weren't losing lives from day to day or week to week. And as many of you who are informed will recall, this is something that really went down quite a bit, to the point where we were coming on the program here at the town hall on Saturdays at times with 1 or 2 deaths, and sometimes those have been complicated by other issues, and people were feeling like that's bad, but it's also a good indicator that this is beginning to be under control. Conversely, in the last week, we've had 23 deaths, so we're way back into double digits again. That's just since we were on the town hall last, 1 week ago. 245 deaths, and that is I think that's a total for the county, at least based on what we know, and I won't get into too much more detail about that, but you'll all remember that this came upon everyone very quickly. Testing was slow to take place on a national basis, and everyone's still trying to really count what the casualties have been of all this. These numbers are the best ones that we have at this time. We do know that 572,298 people have been tested in this county, and that there's a 7-day positivity rate. That means an average over 7 days of 3.5% in this county, which is good relative to the rest of the state, and it's down from last week, which was a little over 4%. So we're overall feeling like we're doing better. We're doing well in many regards. Even our hospitalization rate has decreased by 15 persons in this past week. And the governor just introduced yesterday a new scheme by which we can manage this, which is pretty consistent with the rules that the county put out on July 13th. It'll allow hair salons, barbershops to go back indoors. It will allow some of the activities that this county had already approved back on July 13th. In a way, it gets us off of the watch list system that's been a hang up here for us to follow our own rules. And we could talk about that some more. I'm sure there might be some questions along the way. That said, unless you have been really indisposed, you would know that we have had the worst wildfire week since we were last here, perhaps in the history of the state. And at least one of the largest wildfires in the state's history has occurred right here in this county, actually most of it right in my supervisorial district, and that would be the so-called SCU fire, which has already burned about 371,000 plus acres as we speak. It's only about 40% contained, and that means 60% of it is still running wild. We have high hopes that CAL FIRE and all of the fire agencies will now be able to get that under control. The CZU fire, which isn't as big acreage-wise, but probably about it, did more devastation in terms of lives, in terms of structures, in terms of displacing people. That would be over in Santa Cruz County predominantly, with some San Mateo County, as I recall, 83,335 acres, again, much of which is populated, unlike the SCU fire. So lots of people scared, hurt, displaced, out of possessions, lost possessions, not knowing how they're going to rebuild their lives. And that brings us to our special guest today, Ken Toren, CEO of Red Cross Silicon Valley. I'm so happy that he's here. I'm so appreciative that he's taken the time out of his day on a Saturday afternoon with all these things going on, and all of the people who are doing disaster relief, like Ken, working 7 days a week, to take the time to come here, answer your questions, tell us a little bit more about what's going on. I'm sure it's going to be an education for me, and I want to tell you a little bit more about him. The Red Cross Silicon Valley leads or works with about 1,500 plus volunteers, local volunteers and community partners here in Santa Clara County. I don't think anybody is unaware of the fact that the Red Cross is really the preeminent disaster relief agency, not only here in Santa Clara County, but across the country and globally. Ken himself has served as CEO, COO, Vice President, Director, Board Member, Co-founder, and advisor for many startups, private and public companies, nonprofit agencies. He's very experienced at raising money, which is what you have to do in part if you want to help people out with disaster relief or do just about anything in Silicon Valley. So he's a very accomplished person. I'm going to let him say hello to all of you and introduce himself, and if we were all live, I'd ask you to give him a big round of applause, but you can just do that at home. And Ken, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm okay with taking my mask off.
Yeah, we can do that. It's
a little with you.
It's a little warm in here. Let me just interject, and it does get that way. It's
We're
a beautiful,
distanced.
a beautiful studio, but it does get a little warm sometimes. So we'll put those back on later.
Good. Well, thank you so much for inviting me today, and thank you for everything you do for the community and certainly for Red Cross. So our mission is to alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies, and that's what we do day in and day out, year in and year out. We have 5 lines of service: humanitarian, biomed, and blood donations, which I'll talk about in a moment, training services internationally, as well as services to the armed forces. First, our thoughts and prayers go out to those who lost their lives. We thank our incredibly brave women and men of the fire departments around the area, and those that have come to help the local fire departments from all across the country. We thank Santa Clara County and all the counties that we've been involved with in this disaster response, our partners, our volunteers, certainly, our staff, our faith-based organizations, businesses that have stepped up, and I just want to point out that 95% of the people that are on the front lines of any emergency that we respond to are volunteers. It's an incredible organization when you think about that, setting things up, especially during a very different time that we're in during COVID. Our disaster cycle services involve preparedness, response, and recovery. And so we are in the response mode, and also as we do response, we are also mindful of the recovery phase at the same time. They kind of work simultaneously because we know that's going to always happen. These were three huge complex fires. We've had 500 volunteers, 200 of which were virtual, which is what we're doing in these COVID times that we're in. And many of our volunteers were in the situation of having to be evacuated, and some even lost their homes. But, and this is time and time again, Dave, that, and your viewers should know that time and time again, even the volunteers that have lost everything still volunteer. They still step up. They're still on site, and it's an amazing, even more amazing thing for them to do. As of a couple of days ago, we've had 1,200 people in shelters, 1,800 in hotels. We've served 18,000 meals, 9,000 comfort kits, and made contact with 2,000 people for medical, mental health, emotional, and spiritual care. As you pointed out, the fires were impacted. Each area had a series of non-congregant shelters, which I'll talk about, as well as temporary evacuation points with the county ran. We were supporting that, as well as congregant shelters. And that is the LNU, the CSU, the CZU, and the River fire as well. Red Cross is inclusive. We don't check IDs. Everybody is welcome. We offer services for the disability community, and we engage with all types of groups, including Latinos. We have the Latino outreach engagement program. COVID changed everything, as you well know. And what we would have done in a normal disaster response is we would have had schools and community centers and places where we would run shelters, bring cots in, and do our sheltering operation. But of course, things are different, and we needed to mitigate the risk to our volunteers, to our staff, and to our clients. We started the response at the inception of the fires, and we simultaneously supported many, many different organizations throughout this response. In Santa Clara County, as you know, there were 3 TEPs, temporary evacuation points, one in Morgan Hill, one in Milpitas, and one in Cupertino. And what would happen is people that would be evacuated came to us, and they came to us from Santa Cruz as well, and then we would place them in non-congregated hotels in the area. Since a couple days ago, the Morgan Hill and the Cupertino TEPs have closed, so that's Milpitas is still there. And I just want to say that the hotel community, the lodging community, has been terrific and really stepped up. We contacted, and a big shout out to the SVO and to Team San Jose, put the word out for hotels, not only for clients, but also for volunteers that came in from out of town to relieve the volunteers that had been on site for the last couple of weeks. And the outpouring from the hotel community has just been tremendous. In all, we had 30 non-congregant hotels set up, and then what we did was we did wraparound services. So we treated them just like shelters, but they were at hotels, so we provided meals, we provided care, we provided medical, we provided health, spiritual, emotional care, everything we do, and some of those services obviously were done virtually. I want to talk about pets. So I was down in Morgan Hill, and since it's, there's a lot of farmland around there, many of the people that came to that TEP came with their horses and their other pets. And pets, are so important members of the family. People that know me have my dog. I have my dog Rocky. I think the world of him, and I couldn't imagine being evacuated without him. And pets are very comforting, and they're a very important part of the family. In one situation where a family came to us, and there were 3 children, the husband and wife. They had 2 horses. They had dogs, cats, goats, and pigs. And so they found a place for the horses. And when we called up one of the hotels, we said, so we need a room for 3 children and 2 adults. They have a couple dogs, so these were pet-friendly hotels. And I said to the person on the line, and do you also, can we have a room for the goat and the pigs? There was silence on the phone, but the that was a light moment. But it was truly comforting to for people to know that their pets are with them. The state has stepped up too, and as you know, they are funding, as of I think a couple days ago, up to 1,000 clients for the first couple days that they did this funding, and I think they're providing some funding for hotels for up to 7 days. That's what I'm told, for those that are in evacuation zones. One of the unique things we did, particularly in Santa Cruz County, is we set up mobile community support initiatives, which were, what happened in the evacuation is that many of the people went to RV sites, they went to parking lots, they went to campgrounds, they went to fairgrounds, and they weren't part of the they didn't recognize themselves with Red Cross. So we decided to go out and find them. And so we brought our emergency response vehicles to Santa Cruz. We've also set up a similar process in Healdsburg and Solano. And we literally would go drive around and set up pop-up units in the county where people that were evacuated could come and participate and take advantage of our services. We even reunified a couple that were displaced from one another who found each other through our mobile unit, which was pretty remarkable. Wow. So now we shift over to recovery, and along with CAL FIRE and FEMA, we do a disaster assessment and figure out who, the property loss, who needs assistance from this point forward, who are the agencies that can provide that assistance, who are the referral partners, open up case management for the clients, open up local assistance centers, LACs as we call them. One opened in Santa Cruz County at the Kaiser Pavilion that I was told about this morning. They had 24 agencies. They're open 11 to 11 a.m. daily. They expect to be there anywhere between 30 and 60 days. And one is opening shortly in Monterey. So we are already in that response, shifting over to recovery phase as we speak. So all in all, this was a remarkable event that we had on top of COVID, but the Red Cross pivoted dramatically and didn't stop offering any services. We just did it in a different way, as many agencies are doing today. But it's a real testimony to all of our partners, our counties, our mayors, our firefighters, our volunteers, our staff, faith-based groups, all the groups that I mentioned. We just nothing works without a village, and it's just been a tremendous response, and we're fortunate to have those types of relationships with so many wonderful people.
Oh, it's great, and we'll talk some more. I'm sure Tara has a bunch of questions for us lined up after the opening comments, but we'll talk some more. Okay. I'm interested to hear, and maybe some people will ask, what it's like in this time, to deal, for the Red Cross to deal with sort of continuous loop disaster and disaster relief. I know you're feeling a little bit like this was a thing that happened, but it's an ongoing thing, and then everybody's talking about it being the beginning, the tip of the iceberg for this year, so to speak. Yeah. So we'll hear more about that. Tara?
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of folks have asked about volunteering, which you mentioned, and folks have asked how can they support the Red Cross during this time? Do you need volunteers? What do I do if I want to volunteer?
That's great. Yeah. Those are great questions, and those responses are very much why we're so blessed to have the people in the community that we do. Funding is very important, and people can give to redcross.org, and if you go on redcross.org, then there's a donation button, and certainly we have a Cal Wildfire designation. You can give to your local Red Cross, you can give to disaster response, or you can give to just generally, and then those funds are applied to where there are greatest needs. And funding really is very, very key, because that gives us the flexibility to be able to do a lot of things. Also, people want to do bring supplies and materials and things of that nature. And Red Cross, while we appreciate that generosity, our warehouses are full, and we are typically not taking those kind of supplies, particularly now, because of COVID and because the sorting and the storing of those donations from Other sources would be, a dangerous situation for those that are involved in that. We also are always looking for volunteers, great volunteers. We're blessed to have them in our community. And if you go to redcross.org and look for the volunteer button, there's a way to volunteer, and I believe that there's some local links that we will be providing you as well. I want to point out too, in terms of fundraising, that over 90% of the funds raised by Red Cross support humanitarian services. So this is a very, very responsible organization. We put those hard-earned dollars that people donate to immediate work in the community.
Right. Well, it's you and a website, and you just send that money right out, right?
Well, yeah, it's not quite that simple, but yeah, that's the 30,000-foot level.
Trying to create another light moment. I believe there's a whole big team around you that's
there is
helping to make this work on a moment's notice. And some of those numbers and opportunities to sign up or at least get your name on the list, even if you're not needed immediately. It's similar with us on COVID at the county. People want to be contact tracers and such.
Sure.
You might not get called for a week or two, but put your name on the list, because especially with this pandemic, sadly we don't know if today's volunteers are going to be healthy enough to volunteer next week. So we do need people to give their names and put them on the list to create a bench of support.
Yeah. And generally, I could talk to what's happening in COVID generally. So we are an essential service, and we have pivoted to virtual response. So most people may not know that we respond to 2 to 3 home fires a week, and by response I mean that the first responders will contact us and ask us to come into various disasters, most of which are home fires, so 2 to 3 home fires a week. And most of those services are virtual. So if there's somebody that has a fire and they need to, they're displaced from their home, we typically will offer them some financial assistance to get to a hotel and other kinds of services as well. And a lot of that can be done virtually, although some of it is done face-to-face. We are also doing training classes, so people still need CPR and AED and first aid, and a lot of those things need to be done face-to-face, obviously. And so the first responders and the frontline staff, medical staff, those people that have to be recertified will come to us, and we're doing those training classes. And also we collect 40% of the nation's blood. We have a very, very wonderful blood center on First Street, in our office at First Street in San Jose. That center has been pretty busy throughout this whole process. Most people also know that we do blood drives in the community, and that was impacted tremendously when COVID hit. A lot of the schools and places that we typically do blood drives were canceled because of COVID. However, since that time, since the March-April time, many organizations and businesses have stepped up. Community centers are doing it, businesses, and some private schools have also stepped up, hotels that are doing blood drives. So our numbers are going up, but we still need blood. We always need blood. We're doing antibody testing as well. And we also need African Americans to donate blood because the blood transfusions help patients with sickle cell. So that's an important need right now. But we never stopped offering our services. We just did them in a different way, and serving the community is what we do day in and day out. So it's business as usual for us.
Right. Tara, more questions?
Yeah. So this constituent has a couple questions. They ask, do we have a timeline or a projection of a timeline for the containment of wildfires, the SCU wildfires, and what can individuals do to prevent wildfires or from wildfires from spreading?
Yeah, important questions. I mean, this set of wildfires, for the most part, were triggered by about 11,000 lightning strikes, and I don't know if people realize it because we all get a little myopic in our own communities, but there's been over 600 individual fires. Some of them have merged in the state of California, and I know people want the fire services to be prepared for anything, but it's really hard to be prepared for 600 and some odd fires all at one exact time.
Right.
It is almost as if the whole state has been burning, but people do need to be even extra careful in this time that we're in. Was really set up by years and years of drought before now. On top of natural disasters like lightning strikes triggering fires, the last thing we need is somebody careless, starting a fire just by driving a vehicle with a hot muffler into a grasslands area, or letting a campfire, go the wrong direction, or any of those obvious things. Just really need to be careful now. You've seen it all in terms of fires over the last couple of years, not just here in Silicon Valley. And I should mention again, this is Ken Torin, the Chief Executive Officer of Red Cross Silicon Valley, with us today. But you're part of the mutual aid that goes out when you have something huge going on like the Paradise Fire. I know people have told us when we have donors to contact you and let
Sure.
you guys route it to
Sure.
where it needs to go. So on that question, what insight do you have in terms of what else people should be prepared for in terms of wildfire?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can imagine that a fire happens in your area and you have to get out quickly, right? And that's the goal. You have to get out to safety. Obviously, when I mentioned earlier, we have a team called Disaster Cycle Services. So it's preparedness, response, recovery. So that on the preparedness side, we do a lot of things in the community, from our pillowcase project at the schools to preparedness classes in the community. And I know the county has been terrific about supporting those programs. But bottom line is, you have to think about what you need, and you have to make a kit. And if you go to redcross.org, it has a very clear series of objectives that will get you prepared. But making a kit, gathering your stuff, making sure that you have those things that you can grab and go. Obviously, in the home, we have a program that we typically do called Sound the Alarm, where we literally go into people's homes. And we've been doing a lot of that work in mobile home parks and installing free smoke alarms, making those homes safe. Yeah. So obviously, the one primary thing that you should be doing is checking your smoke alarms regularly. But I was at some of the non-congregant shelters, which are the hotels, and you just imagine somebody says, "Get out, get in your car, go." And you go to a strange place, and somebody says, "Go to this hotel," and you have a trunk full of stuff. It's a very, very traumatic, emotional time. So we just urge people to make their kits, to check their smoke alarms, to be prepared, to leave quickly. And I mentioned your pets, and make sure that you have the appropriate things for your pets as well, because this fire spread very quickly, and people were going from that yellow line of the watch to the red line and the evacs, and get them out. But I would suggest that you go to redcross.org to learn more about preparedness. And to your other point, we do deploy our volunteers around the country. In the last couple of years I've been here, we've gone through Hurricane Harvey, Maria, Irma, the Mexican earthquake. There was a shooting incident in Las Vegas, the Napa fire, the Camp Fire, the Gilroy shooting. We had a series of disasters that were amazing and very, very sad. And now the wildfires here. And I should also point out that at the same time the wildfires are taking place, we're dealing with Hurricane Laura in Louisiana and Tennessee. We served 14,000 people since Thursday, and also working with partners to provide 35,000 meals to those that are impacted by the hurricane. And that's just because there's wildfire season and there's hurricane season, and oh, by the way, there's a pandemic on top of that. So that makes this a much more challenging time, but we're very resilient, and our volunteers are amazing.
Well, if you go to redcross.org, know that for every $1 you contribute, if that's what you can do, 90 cents will go directly
Absolutely.
out to people who are suffering right now, and it'll alleviate that suffering. I have to just say, anecdotally, during this past week, my house was in the evacuation
Oh,
warning
really?
zone, but it was exactly what you're talking about. It was at times for a half an hour or so temporarily shifted into an evacuation zone. So as you started getting all your things to move, then all of a sudden it would shift back to a
Right.
warning zone. And it is a feeling that I don't think you can replicate for someone
Right.
to be that disrupted. And you know, I have a 3-year-old Labrador, very rambunctious dog ordinarily, but he suddenly was walking around. You know, you didn't have to tell him heel. He put his head right on my knee wherever I was going, and you know, they know something's up, and you know, we can not only watch nature but watch our pets to get a sense, you know, that we're going to have to leave. And I think he was trying to tell me, don't leave me here.
Yeah.
Of course, I would never do that, but I think something that people, having lived through that near experience like that, it's difficult to know when to move the rest of the stuff, you know, into your car. In other words, when you're in a warning area,
Yeah.
and people are saying get your stuff ready to go,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff you actually need in the next hour or two.
Right, right.
So you know, I think people have a real life human nature issue of, do I really want to be going out to get my toothbrush back out of the car and bring it back in the house?
Right.
I mean, there's some practical issues like that, but we have to remember not to let those things slow us down, because there are going to be folks like the Red Cross there at the other end to help you fill those gaps when you get there.
And we call them go kits. And so, you know, you should make a go kit with water, you know, to last a certain period of time. So you just make that kit and put it in your trunk and put it in a place where you can grab and go. Because in this particular time where we had all this confluence of wildfires, lightning fires, you walked outside and the air quality was terrible. You smelled it, and you saw it all day long, day in and day out for over a week. It was really dreary, and then it started to get a little more blue sky. And so it's real. The wildfires have happened in the last couple of years, one after the other.
Yeah.
It's going to continue for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, in this particular case, it was lightning, it was wind, it was heat. You know, and so that may be unusual, but maybe not, right? So so you have to be ready, you have to be diligent, you have to be prepared, because we all experienced it.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's an eye-opening thing to, you know, to remind you of the importance of being prepared.
Yes, very, very good point. Tara?
So next question is, in the wake of widespread wildfires, do we need to institute long-term measures to combat climate change more urgently?
I'll let you handle that.
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. I don't think I've read anything scientific over the last couple of weeks, certainly since the lightning strikes, that didn't integrate the issue of warmer climate, you know, with what's happened, including the fact that, you know, the lightning strikes themselves came out of a weather front that was basically the residual of a hurricane, of tropical weather, which ordinarily would not move up here. Right. Into Northern California with that kind of you know, that kind of veracity and really that kind of a punishing nature. And certainly we've had our little rain showers here in September every year. I mean, to get lightning storms, this isn't the Midwest, at a time coming off of 5.5, 6 years of drought. I think most of us here, certainly it's a political position of mine that we don't have much more time to start reversing and quickly reverse in any way we can the man-made influences on global warming and climate. So it's an underlying issue, and you know, local governments and the Red Cross aren't going to even be able to keep up if we get to the point of essentially planetary emergency, and it seems like we're getting there pretty quickly. So we did with the pandemic, and I do think the pandemic has opened a lot of people's eyes. We hear it from our constituents all the time, that if we can respond to a pandemic with the kind of measures that we have, telecommuting, the rapid kind of change in the way we do business, can't we do some of the same things to address climate issues? And if we don't, perhaps this is foreshadowing some of the consequences of it.
Well, we will be ready.
You will be ready. I know the Red Cross, it must be great comfort. I said I was in evacuation warning zone, but I wasn't evacuated. But all I can imagine is to see that Red Cross, thank you, I got mine today,
Yep.
Out in front of you or pulling up on a mobile unit. For generations, that's brought great comfort to people. And I know in the circumstances I was in, just to see the Red Cross showing up would have eased my anxiety about 100%. So, that's something you can't measure.
It's a symbol of hope.
Symbol of hope. Tara?
Yeah, so our next question is, do we anticipate an uptick in COVID cases because of the unhealthy air quality caused by the wildfires?
I don't know about air quality itself causing that, but you've talked about all of the things that you've had to do to change the way the Red Cross responds so that you're not congregating people. I mean, it was ordinary to congregate volunteers, right, to congregate victims, if you will. We've certainly seen it in government work as well. We're seeing civil unrest going on in the country. It just seems like every other day, as hard as we work to keep these COVID numbers down that I was talking about earlier, there are other phenomena that cause people to congregate and come together for good reason, and you just expect there's going to be an uptick in a couple weeks. Do you think we'll see an uptick in a couple weeks from the fires?
Yeah, I don't know. What I can say is this, that we are running a very, very busy blood services operation, both at our fixed sites, like the ones in San Jose, as well as the blood drives. And we are doing temperature screening, we're doing social distancing, wearing masks, we're wiping things down. We have beds that are much more separated from one another. I'd invite you to come and give blood if you'd like.
Yeah, I've done it before.
And so we're really practicing, all the precautions. But we do have a lot of people coming in to give blood. It's remarkable, frankly. And the staff that's there, the nurses and all the practitioners that are there to help take the blood and process the blood, et cetera, are all there every single day. We're open every single day. And it's just amazing to me. And I go into the office because I just feel that it's so important for me to be there to just thank people. And we also have volunteers that are doing temperature screening as soon as you come in. And these are all volunteers from all walks of life everywhere in the community. Many students too, many students we have. And just to talk to them, just to thank them and learn more about them and see how we can help them at some point or another. And this wood, I don't know if I should knock on wood, but we're keeping things pretty healthy there.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think about all the people that are coming in and all the different, from wherever they're coming in. But we're doing all the precautions. It's a completely safe thing to do, and we've been very fortunate. And we need blood, and people are very generous.
And we've learned a lot in the last 5 months about how to keep things safe. 5 months ago, everything was an experiment. Everything was new, and
Yep.
people were having challenges trying to convert to
Yep.
Safe spaces. And of course, we know how to do that now. Of course, the Red Cross would know how to do that. So, Ken Toren, CEO, Red Cross Silicon Valley, is here answering questions. We have more questions, Tara?
Yeah, so our next question is, how can we support our firefighters and our first responders?
Well, what do you say about that?
Well, so we've been on the grounds. So when we bring in meals and we have supplies, we certainly welcome our firefighters and have provided meals to them and support for them. It's a collective effort, right? We're always working together, always helping one another. I have heard outside of Red Cross many neighborhoods and organizations that are in restaurants and food service providers that are providing those types of things to the fire departments and the fire stations. But I think really the support is that everybody does their job, right? And I think that that's how a disaster response works well, when everybody has a piece and there's proper handoffs, like the county and Red Cross and the firefighters. Everybody's kind of working in sync. But the more that we can help the firefighters, the better. And there's many organizations out there, many partners that are doing those things. Brave people, and many that I've known coming from neighborhoods that have been completely unimpacted, and places around the country that are coming in, because these folks are on the front lines for days and weeks at a time. They need a break. They need a break, and so wonderful support from all over the country. And that's what happens in these major disaster responses. The outpouring of support comes from everywhere. But I would encourage people to look for opportunities to help the firefighters and find out what their needs are. And I'm sure you can go to CAL FIRE or maybe the county has some suggestions too.
Yeah, always feel free to contact our office or go to our website, supervisorcortese.org, and or just call 408-299-5030. Tara and Janice and Tevu and the rest of the staff members will drop what they're doing and connect you with folks that are supportive. And there are a number of ways to do that. We see a lot of people putting up signs now in our neighborhood, because I'm up there in the Elm Rock hills right off of Mount Hamilton Road, where the SCU fire went through, and people are doing that to try to be thankful. I don't want to speak for the firefighters, but I think when they're in the middle of it, what they really want everyone to do is just follow instructions.
Yeah.
Follow instructions. Please do what we're asking. Please be prepared. Please evacuate when you're supposed to, and then we can have a big celebration and a thank you at the end.
Absolutely.
and do all that later.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this may be our last question. And it is, what actions is the county taking to prepare for natural disasters, including wildfire season?
Well, we have at the county something that's going to be on the board agenda this Tuesday. If you want to tune in on Zoom, again, contact my office. Monday would be best, when the staff is there answering the phones. Between 9 to 5, they can let you know how to follow the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday. It starts at 9:30 in the morning. You don't have to go down to the county. You can just get on Zoom. And the wildlands plan for the county, which was put together by some really good experts here in the county, including our fire chief, Tony Bowden, that will be on the agenda. How to best fund that, how to talk about things like consolidation of some of our fire districts to further increase not only efficiencies, but to make the money stretch a little further. These are the pros and cons of doing these things. It's exactly the kind of discussion where we want public input. We need public input, and we don't want one segment of the community just being quiet or standing down when they might be an area that's most affected by fires. Sometimes that happens. We hear from a certain clique or a certain group in the community, and you wonder, well, where are those people from the mountains or the hillsides or South County? How come they're not here? They have a lot at stake in all of this. But the county's doing all of those things to try to be prepared and try to be the most prepared county in the state. It's been interesting this year because, as you well know, we've been sending mutual aid, county and city firefighters everywhere else for the last couple of years, just like you have at the Red Cross. And now I think it's been a little bit of a wake-up call to accelerate our own preparation efforts right here, to make sure we're prepared. I know you always are, but the county has to do that, and we are doing that.
And the time to prepare is when there are no fires and no disasters, and that's the time to really get all the constituents together, all the jurisdictions together, and work together to make a plan and to implement and execute accordingly. And we are part of that process. We're included, and it's great that we are at the table because when these things happen, we all need to move quickly and get started. But but the more we can prepare and the more we can think about what needs to be done in the community, the smoke alarms, some of the things we're doing, the better we're all going to be when things happen, and they will happen.
One more question, Tara?
Yeah, just one last question, and this is from Hey online, and he wants to know if there are opportunities for online CERT training classes or online Red Cross disaster response trainings or any other sort of online emergency response training.
Yes, there are many online, more online classes than obviously ever before. So if you just go to redcross.org, I think maybe click on the training section, you'll find endless numbers of great virtual online classes that teach so many different things related to preparedness. And if you're a volunteer, there are a number of trainings that are required there that are very informative. All these trainings, to train you to become a shelter worker or take some role in a disaster response, whether it's a home fire or whether it's a wildfire, you begin to think about your own home, and you say, am I really prepared?
Yeah.
Am I ready to go? When the time comes. And so yes, the answer is we have some tremendous online classes and virtual classes, and so we invite your viewers and the community to take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've helped fund some CERT training on a small scale in community centers like the Campbell Community Center in the recent past. And, because cell towers are lost sometimes, or some of these things occur in mountainous areas where there's no signals, there's even still ham radio operators that are part of the response and CERT training. So if you have those skills or a license, you probably already know about that, but if you're wondering, if you're new to the area, there's plenty of organizations to plug into to deal with.
Yeah, and the CERTs are wonderful. We partner with them year-round. They have volunteered and have run some of our Sound the Alarm events to install free smoke alarms. They've been terrific. They're great partners, and they're wonderful volunteers, and they step in when they're needed.
Great. One more. That's it. We're going to just kind of try to wrap up here. If you didn't get your question answered and you happen to have just sent one in, we got to wrap up here because we just have a few minutes left of time. Again, it's been very generous of the Viet Tute charity here to allow us this beautiful studio that they have, just top drawer equipment and everything else, which allows us to bring this to you. But if you didn't get your question answered, don't give up. You can go to my website, call the office, look at those numbers on the screen, go to redcross.org. We'll make sure between Ken Torin and I and my staff and his staff that your questions get answered well after today. This isn't a one-shot opportunity to help out or to get your questions answered. And Ken, I want to let you kind of wrap us up. And often when we have a guest, especially given the topics that we've had to deal with here that have been life and death issues and have required so much public support and so much volunteer support and just so much buy-in from the public, I often ask what I'm going to ask you right now to maybe just let our viewers and our listeners know whatever message you have for them, whether it's coming from a place of gratitude or need or encouragement at this time. I think people would love to hear that.
Well, I'm going to end, I guess, the way I started, which is to extend our thoughts and prayers to the people that lost their lives, and deeply thank, as we talked about quite a lot today, the partners, the county, the firefighters, the volunteers, the staff, faith-based groups, all the groups of people that have stepped up to do many different things, whether they delivered food somewhere or whether they volunteered somewhere, whatever people did. is a wonderful thing, and whatever they're continuing to do is just so great going forward. I would encourage people to, if they wish to support Red Cross, is to make a financial donation, redcross.org/donation, and you can designate that to various funds. There's a drop-down menu, or you can give to a general purpose fund that allows the funds to go to where the most immediate need is. We talked about preparedness. It's always time to prepare. There's never a bad time to do that. So get ready, because things are going to happen. So the more prepared, the better. We so appreciate the amount of volunteers that we have, the wonderful people that do the work day in and day out, all the people that we've had on this disaster response, the 500 or so that we've had, and the hundreds that we're going to have going forward from all over this county, all over the region, all over the country. And I just wanted to thank you personally for allowing me to be here. It's a beautiful studio, and your staff has been terrific. And this has been great to be able to talk about the importance of our community and what Red Cross has been able to do.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of people who will have reviewed this before the day is over. So thank you all for checking in, and we'll look forward to being back next week, and we'll get the information out and the word out to all of you. It will be 3 o'clock next Saturday, and we'll let you know who's going to be here and what we'll be talking about. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, so we'll probably figure out sometime in the middle of the week what's the most important topic that we need to focus on this week. Thank you, Ken.
Sure,
Thanks for
thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you
All
for
right.
inviting me.